What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to go on a little bit of a rant. But for those of you who are new, rants is kind of where I go in and vent or just discuss hot topics, call out some BS in the industry. Um, so someone's got to do it. I'll go ahead and say my 2 cents in there. And then we have interviews. Those are other types of podcasts that we have. There's long talks with experts, coaches, and athletes. Also, the mental minutes, those are your quick tips to boost your mental game and improve your performance. And then also the deep dives, which is where we dig into details and learning new skills or getting in the zone and diving a little bit deeper into the little bit more intricacies, or maybe that's nutrition or some other things on how to program. We just get really, really into it, but we'll stick to the topic today for this rant. It's kind of more of a coaching tip. We're talking about vomit cueing, right? And I've seen this several times in myself. I'm guilty of this included. So don't think I'm on this high pedestal saying I'm all high and mighty and that I'm better than anyone doing this. Like, we all fall into this trap, right? So again, don't take this as an attack personally, but if you do, hey, maybe you probably need to kind of check your ego a little bit and reel it back. But we've all seen some of those coaches where they're going to have to say something between every single pitch, right? Like, it's kind of more of those little lessons that you see where kid throws one pitch to his catcher, and then all of a sudden it's like a 5-minute dissertation, where everything's kind of coming out and vomiting, or, that's the term that I kind of come from. It's like you're literally throwing everything at him and not really having much going on there, right? And almost kind of similar but more in actions are some of these constraints that guys are doing, right? It's more of they're trying to break down things into parts. And I don't know if it's just because guys in the industry, they try to be different or try to come up with something a little innovative, which again, I'm all for trying to, you know, have an environment where you can actually do that and experiment with some things. But at the same time, there's a point where you cross that line and it's just very excessive, and it's honestly kind of awful to look at. Right. But I'll kind of go on that in a little bit. But really, you just gotta really get to know the athlete first, right? Like, I think having some rapport there is really what you want to do, and keeping it simple, right? The simplicity in coaching is really the art of it, right? Like, you don't want to overwhelm the athlete, or you're saying too much and then they're like, okay, 5 minutes later, okay, so what do I do again? Right? Like, they're just like, oh, thanks, coach. And most guys are very respectful, right? And they're gonna want to, be a people pleaser, try to please the coach, do what he says, especially right in front of them. They may change it whenever they leave the lesson, or when they leave, the session, or whatever the bullpen, um, you know, pitch design that you guys are working on. What's gonna keep it simple for them to stick? And a lot of guys that I do this with, I kind of want them to reiterate to me. I'm like, okay, hey, what did you get out of today? Right? Like, put it into your own words. Or whenever I say, hey, what did you feel? I want them to come up with the word. I'm not trying to put words into their heads or try to give them this weird dogmatic type of thinking, right? And a lot of that, again, is starting to build the rapport with the athlete. And you can still talk to them on a personal basis, especially, I think, you want to be intentional in your warm-ups, but sometimes whenever you're just like doing bands or something that's a little, just less, more or less, doesn't involve much thought, I guess is the word I'm trying to come to, right? Like, that's where you can kind of build up some of that rapport, but you do want to have warm-ups where they're engaged and not just going through the motions too. Again, whole nother topic on that. But I think if you have minimal cues, you're going to get the maximum amount of impact, right? And that's making sure that what they're getting out of it is like, okay, hey, this is the one thing. And maybe if you need to go down that route where you're giving that whole spiel, I think it's only if the athlete asks you the question of like, hey, what do you mean by this? And sometimes it's better off for you to just go ahead and finish the session, and then you guys kind of talk it out. I know I personally kind of got frustrated with coaches whenever I played. I was like, dude, just let me finish my pin and then we can talk about this later. Because right now, I can't necessarily change everything that I'm doing because I'm just focusing on trying to accomplish a task. I'm trying to throw this pitch. unless you think it's going to help right then and there, maybe a quick cue for like, hey, like try to throw this on the catcher's helmet, right? And again, those are cues that are external, that are outside of what they're trying to physically think. And it's kind of does come from a mindset of coaches thinking that kids are broken, which I hate, because they're not broken. They just need to make an adjustment. Like, that's it. There's nothing wrong with them. You don't have to break things down and do all these little minute assessments thinking that you're a wannabe PT, which, whole another rant on that too. But that's my thing, is just keep it minimal, keep it simple, and having some feedback from the athlete and be like, hey, is this working for you? Or is this not working for you? And sometimes you can kind of tell if you're seeing athletes kind of train around you a lot and you're seeing some nonverbal cues for guys. They're just like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to just go ahead and do this. Or, oh, I need to work on this. Right? The need, or I have to, like all those words that they might be saying that are verbal are also cues for the coach to figure out, hey, there's something deeper here. Like, what's going on? Is there something going on in school? Like, what did your girlfriend break up with you or something? Like, that's where you really got to break down and build some rapport with these guys. But keep it positive, keep it loose, let them explore on their own and be like, hey, one of the guests that we had on the podcast was Tanner Pruitt. He likes to show guys warm-ups and be like, hey, it might look like this. And again, the wording is essential. Like, you're not stuck in this only one way of doing things. You need to be able to explore and figure things out and become more of a problem-solving athlete. And having that environment is huge, because you want to empower the guys that you're coaching to help them take ownership of their training, of what they need to do, because you're not always going to be there, right? Whether they're, at a high school or tournament ball, or they go off to college, or they go off to play pro ball. Like, hate to say it, but those coaches, you're not going to be able to follow them all along the way, right? Even if you do have some remote training at some capacity, or having some like satellite kind of thing going on with them, like, there's still some drawbacks with that. And even with me owning one of those businesses, I agree. Like, hey, I only know as much as I can of what the athlete tells me, but I need to give you guys, the athletes, the tools to be able to problem solve on your own, to figure things out on your own, to come with me to be like, hey, I was working on this and maybe I was trying to do this. Like, I love it when athletes do that. Sometimes they can get a little domed up and be too into the process of trying to break things down on their own, which again, this is fine. Like, but I want them to learn how to think for themselves too. So, that's the biggest thing for me on this rant is, you keep it simple. Don't vomit cues. Build the rapport with the athlete, because then they're going to be more likely to be able to listen to you and get to, actually open up and be willing to have that open and free environment to move. Because if you're mentally in that headspace where you know that you can be free and move around, it's gonna elicit a lot more creativity, and versus being very strict or very rigid in all the things that you do, or you're expecting guys to move and look a certain way aesthetically. That's also a mindset that's going to restrict their movements, right? So again, me just kind of ranting here, but hopefully you guys got something out of this, and stay in the zone.